Hi, I'm Margaret Lewin and welcome to Margaret Lewin Quilting. Today we are going to be working on these blocks, which these are called flying geese. They're a little bit larger than normal flying geese, but that's exactly what they are. So we're going to do flying geese this month, and we're also going to be doing this outside border. Now borders are going to be done from this point forward exactly like we've done them every single month. Again, in flying geese, we do have spacers so that if for some reason your block is not quite the size that it needs to be, you can make the adjustments on it. So that's what we're going to be working on today, and here we go. I have my 3 fabrics stacked up to make my geese, the inside of the geese. I have my light purple, my blue, which I think looks like wisteria, and then my raspberry. So I've stacked them all up. You're gonna cut your squares according to the directions. And then the next thing that you're gonna do is cut them diagonally, so you'll get 4 out of every single one of these, which I think is a pretty cool thing. One of the best ways to do it is to lay your ruler down, make certain that your edge here is straight, and then what you're going to do is just cut this way. So I'll do that one first. And then I'm not going to pick this up at all. I'm going to leave my block sit right there. I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to cut it again. So I'm cutting all 3 of mine at one time. So now I have, here's 1 block. I'll set that one aside, 2, and then 3. So I've just lined them up nicely so that they are ready to go. All right. The next thing that I'm going to do is I have to make my wings, and according to my directions, I'm going to cut these 4 inches. I need a total of 6 of them. Now, I had blocks that were a little bit more than 4 inches left over from another part of the quilt. So I'm just going to hang on to those. I've stacked them so that they are perfectly square. And I'm just going to bring my ruler in and see my 4 inches. These were actually cut at, looks like 4.5 square. So now I'm going to take these and just use these scraps from another part of the project. And I'll square these up at 4 inches. And then I'm going to be ready to put my geese together. So I'm going to square these 3 up first. Set these aside with my geese. And then I'm going to square up 3 more. Now, these 3 were not all cut at the same time. I'm going to have to cut this one twice. So I'm going to again take my ruler, and I'm squaring it right up. And what I'm going to do now is make sure that I've got a good 4 inches because it needs to be 4. Make sure I got side to side and up and down. I'm going to hold my fabric. Ooh, I could feel that it didn't cut that. And square it up again. Okay. Now I'm going to move my ruler aside. Carefully rotate them. Put it back down again. And now I can square this one right to 4. The other one was really square to begin with. This one was not. So we're just going to trim these and these. So once I've squared these both up, which I have them all at 4 inches, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them diagonally. So I'm doing just 1 diagonal cut this time, whereas just before we did 2. So here's some of mine, and here's the rest of them. So make sure that you've continued to keep them really nice and straight. If they've moved, you're going to have to adjust your blocks a little bit. So there's those. And now I'm going to trim this piece. So now I've got all my triangles and I've got my geese. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, and I'm going to line them all up. I'm going to put right sides together. And I'm going to line them up just like this. All right. I'm going to turn it over so that you can see I'm right on there. I do have extra fabric here, but that's okay. all right? Because we cut them a little bit bigger, we're gonna have an extra little tail. If you want to, you could actually move this up just enough that you could see the other fabric below it, because we're going to be squaring these all up. So go ahead and you can move this up just a little bit so that you've just got a whisper of the fabric underneath there, and then you know you'll have plenty of fabric to square it up. So I'm going to line these 3 up. Hopefully I'll move these aside so that you can really see it. And again, taking my fabric, right sides together, and I'm just gonna put the top piece, the background fabric, just a whisper below my geese. All right, and now for my third one. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, whoops, that's too far. I'm going to take these over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam right here, here, and here. Just going to do them one right after the other. Once I've done that, I'm going to set my seams, and then I'm going to go press. And then I'll come back and show you how I've pressed them, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, here are my 3 geese. I've lined them up, and you can see that I have pressed them. I set my seams, and then I press towards my background fabric, okay? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my next 3 pieces, and I'm just going to line those up the exact same way that I lined this one up. Again, I do have it just a little bit over the bottom, which is just fine. Got a little bit, remember, we're going to be squaring this right up, so don't hesitate. You're all right having just a little extra fabric on the bottom. So here we go with the next one, and then here's my third one. So now I'm going to take these over, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to sew my 1/4 inch seam. I'll take them over to my pressing table. I'm going to press them, set my seams first, then press them to the background fabric, and then I'll be over here to show you how easy these are to square up. All right, here are my geese. Got all 3 of them done. You can see that they are definitely oversized because our geese are going to be 3.5 inches tall, and we're just over it. We're 3 5/8, and they are going to be 6.5, and we're just over 6.5 inches. Okay, that's good. We want it like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up so that you can see it, and I'm going to bring the camera in a little bit closer so that you can see how I go about squaring up my geese. I'm going to square this up for you and show you how I do it. I know based on the size of my block, it's supposed to be 6.5 inches wide. Excuse the dog's panting, it's quite hot here. It's supposed to be 6.5 inches wide by 3.5 inches. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to square up my 2 sides. If my block is supposed to be 6.5 inches wide, I know that my center point right here is supposed to be 3 1/4. So I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to find my 3 1/4 point, which is right here. I've got it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line that up right here, because that's my 1/4 inch seam, with the base of this point, because I need a 1/4 inch seam allowance to go over. So here we go. I'm at 1/4 there, I've got my 3 1/4 there. I'm going to move it up. I'm going to keep it nice and straight, and now I'm double checking down here. I'm still at 3 1/2. I'm going to move it up just a little bit more. Just making certain, using this point and looking at my sides, making certain that I'm staying really square. I'm going to trim and then trim again. And see, now I've cut my dog ears off, which is fantastic. I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to rotate it, and now we're going to check again. I'm going to put my ruler down, and I know 3 1/4 is where my point needs to be. So I'm 3 1/4 right here. Now look, not only do I get to check here, I get to check across the bottom, and I also get to check my diagonal line to make sure that I've stayed square. I can trim and then trim again, and then I have my nice square geese. Isn't that fantastic? It's nice and square and it's ready to go on. So let's do one more. I'll pick the pink one just because it's a little bit brighter, so it's a little easier to see. So again, I know that my block is 6 1/2 inches wide, 3 1/2 inches tall. So I'm going to take my ruler, find my 3 1/4, it's right here. Now I'm just going to move it up so that I stay right there. I want that 1/4 inch to fall right at the top of my geese right here so that I get my nice 1/4 inch seam. Okay. Gonna take that, make sure I stay square, and now I'm gonna trim. Gonna take this off, move it around, and let's do that again. So now we can check here, here, and here. So I know I need it to be 6 1/2, and I am. I know I need it to be 3 1/2, and I am. So now I can trim and trim, and my block is all done. It will make it much nicer when I go to put these together in the correct order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up one geese. Now make sure that you keep them in the right order because they go pink, the light purple. Let's go ahead and square this one up too. 3 1/4. 1/4 inch seam, making certain that I'm straight by checking across the bottom, squaring, moving my little extra threads. Oops. Really think I have to change my rotary blade. My 3 1/4 again. Checking my diagonal line, making certain that I'm staying square. And now I can trim again. Okay, so now we're ready to lay it out. So our raspberry goes first, then our very light purple, then our darker blue, which I call wisteria. We're going to fold one side over. We're going to pin our 2 ends. There's one end. Lay it flat. Pin our second end. And then we're going to pin our middle. I'm going to turn this over. Oh, my pressing didn't go quite right. We're going to turn this over, and we will put one more pin here in the center to hold it down. First, I'm going to go fix that, okay? Because that's going to be a problem down the road. So I want to get that fixed. So I'll be right back. Okay, all better. So now I'm going to take a 3rd pin, and I'm just going to put it right here in the center. And then when I stitch, I'm going to stitch right across. I'm going to keep this side up so that I can see that I hit my 1/4 inch, or that I'm right here when I sew across it. And then I will have my flying geese. Once you get your flying geese all sewn, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to be attaching these blocks here. In these blocks, there's another one down here. These blocks are all spacers. So what you're going to do is go through your directions and measure your prior block, your quilt, up to this point, and take 3 measurements, one at the top, one in the middle, and one at the bottom. Divide that number by 3, and that is how wide your border is going to be of your flying geese. Now, if any adjustments need to be made to that, I'll move the camera. So any adjustments that need to be made in the length of your block will be made right here. Usually that's the problem. We end up with our blocks too big, not too small. So make certain that you square these up every step of the way and make sure that you double check your measurements. So then you're just going to add your borders how we've been adding our borders every single time. Then the next thing you're going to do is start working on this border. And in the directions, it will give you the exact width and length to cut your strips. Cut your strips, attach them the same way you've done the other ones, and we're going to be done with our block this month. Next month, we're going to be working on our square in a square, which, let me move the camera again, is right here. And this is a really cool block once you get it down. And I've got a couple hints that I'll be giving you on how to make sure that you've got a nice square block with this one. So, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you again next month for Sarah's Star.